He approached the guardsman with clear intent. The tourist laughed, making mocking remarks, until he swung to kick, with a predatory grin, with utter contempt. But the moment his foot almost touched the target, the guardsman dodged with the precision of a professional. The tourist lost his balance, and the crowd burst into laughter. But the worst of it all began when the guards came up and led him out of the square. What happened next made everyone freeze for a moment. But let's start at the beginning. The weather, as if on demand, turned out to be flawless. The gentle summer sun illuminated the facade of the royal palace, sparkling on the gilded wrought iron gates and reflecting off the freshly pressed lapels of the guard's uniform. At the main entrance, motionless as a statue, stood the guard. Tall, fit, as if he had stepped out of a military textbook, he performed his duty with impeccable posture. His face, stern and impassive, revealed neither fatigue, nor irritation, nor curiosity about the endless stream of tourists. He was part of the ritual, a symbol of order, pride, and discipline. The crowd at the palace gates, as usual, was colorful and lively. Tourists were snapping photos, lining up to take selfies with the guard, admiring his stillness, comparing him to a wax figure, and chatting respectfully among themselves. For most, it was a chance to touch a living tradition, to see the face of the country expressed in that motionless stance and precise movements. And then, like a stain on a clean tablecloth, like rust on a polished surface, someone detached from the crowd. Staggering and loudly slurping from a beer bottle, a tourist headed toward the guard. A man in his early 30s, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt with a faded logo of some beer brand, his eyes slightly clouded with alcohol and self-confidence. He wasn't walking, he was floating, waving his arms and smiling that particular smile worn only by the most foolish and the most confident in their impunity. "Wow!" he exclaimed, stopping almost right in front of the guard. "Are you really alive? Let me see." He began to make faces. Puffing out his cheeks, rolling his eyes, hopping from foot to foot while laughing wildly. His laugh was loud, forced, and theatrical, the kind of laugh made by those who really want to make an impression. He waved the beer bottle right in front of the guard's face, as if testing to see if the guard would react to the movement. The guard didn't flinch. And the tourist, encouraged by the lack of reaction, only grew more amused. With each passing minute, it became clear, this was a clash of two worlds. One, silent, composed, built on centuries of discipline. The other, noisy, drunk, and self-satisfied. And the tension in the air began to hum, like the calm before a storm. The tourist clearly sensed the crowd's reaction. Someone in the crowd started filming, others began laughing, and some shook their heads disapprovingly. But he didn't notice any of it anymore. His drunken self-confidence had grown to the point where he truly believed he was the main character in this scene. The majestic gates, the historic walls, the impeccably groomed guard, to him, they were now just the background. The setting for his personal show. He snapped his fingers in front of the guard's face, imitating a magician, but with a look on his face more suited to a cheap street clown. Then he started leaning closer, muttering something, pretending to be a bull, inhaling deeply and making funny grunts, as though he was about to charge. Not a single muscle on the guard's face moved. He stood there as if the person before him didn't even exist. And, of course, this only fueled the tourist further. "Hey, soldier!" he shouted, starting to lose his voice. "What about this?" Suddenly, he staggered back as if aiming, and with a ridiculous expression on his face, he lifted his leg, slowly, with drunken determination. Yes, he was going to kick. Not hard, more as a show. But the gesture wasn't just foolishness anymore, it was an attempt to humiliate, to provoke, to get a reaction. He wanted to make the guard flinch, stumble, fall. He wanted to finally make the crowd laugh, even if just a few applauded his bravery. His foot moved forward in a lazy, sweeping drunken swing, accompanied by a satisfied grunt. The tourist didn't yet know that the line had already been crossed. That what came next would not be his show. The guard slightly raised an eyebrow. Perhaps it was just a shadow under his cap. But in that moment, everything was decided. He moved. Just one step, to the side. No sharpness, no threat. Just a step, calculated to the millimeter. And in the same instant, the weight of the tourist's own swing pulled him forward, straight into the spot where the prop had stood just a second before. Amid the laughter of the crowd, with an expression of utter confusion on his face, he flew forward like a sack of potatoes, losing his balance, his bottle, and what little dignity he had left. The fall was epic. The tourist, bewildered by his own gravity, collapsed onto the cobblestones with a dramatic gesture worthy of a silent film, arms outstretched, face forward, knees buckling, his jacket flipping up. All of this was accompanied by a series of wet slaps and wheezing sounds that seemed to echo even in the ancient walls. At the moment of impact, he made a sound that resembled a mix of a sneeze, a hiccup, and a mournful groan, the last remnants of his bravery. The crowd erupted in laughter. The laughter was varied, some laughed openly, others filmed while stifling giggles, some simply shook their heads with expressions of what an idiot. A few children pointed at him and laughed out loud. Even the pigeons, sitting nearby, fluttered away, as if unwilling to be part of such a disgraceful scene. And the guard? The guard remained impeccable. He didn't smile. He didn't twitch an eyebrow. He simply took a step back, into his perfect, calculated stance, and froze again, like a statue guarding the timeless dignity of the building behind him. Officer's posture, gleaming bayonet, a cold gaze forward. It was as if he erased the incident from the surface of time, leaving only the sense of honor and discipline in his wake. Moments later, security personnel appeared on the scene, polite but firm. One of them grabbed the tourist by the collar, while the other helped him gather his scattered belongings. The tourist mumbled something incoherent, either trying to justify himself or come up with a version where he was still the winner. He was quickly, but not roughly, escorted away, amid laughter, applause, and openly satisfied spectators. The guard remained at his post. Once again motionless, once again unwavering. And then, from somewhere in the back rows, at first hesitantly, then louder, applause began. First, it was solitary claps, then a full wave. People weren't just applauding the men in uniform. They were applauding dignity. Composure. The human restraint that, in the end, always prevails over cheap bravado. The crowd gradually dispersed, but the sense of something significant still hung in the air, like a faint echo after a well-executed scene. People moved off to the side, retelling the story to their friends, some already editing videos for social media. And in all those conversations, there was one common thread: admiration. Not for the scuffle, not for the ridiculous fall, but for the way the guard had carried himself with such dignity. He was still standing at his post. Just as he had before. Just as others had before him. Just as they would stand after, equally composed, silent, dependable. He wasn't seeking applause. He wasn't waiting for recognition. To him, nothing extraordinary had happened, just another day, just another person who tried to cross boundaries, and just another test passed flawlessly. When his shift ended, he didn't hurry. He took one step, then another. He turned precisely, at an angle, as taught on the parade ground, and headed toward the gate. The people quieted for a moment, as if paying their respects, not so much to the men, but to the symbol of order and restraint. Some clapped again, others simply nodded as he walked away. He didn't respond, only gave a slight nod, barely perceptible, but enough to show that he had seen, heard, and understood. Somewhere in the background, security was politely escorting the still outraged tourist away. But no one was thinking about him anymore. And the guard left the way he came, with a straight back, a clear stride, and complete calm in his eyes. And that calm stayed with everyone who had witnessed the scene. Because true strength lies in dignity.